Your code is worthless, and a top venture capitalist just told me why. What if the smartest thing you could do as a founder is make yourself the dumbest person in the room? What if your biggest competitive advantage isn't your product, it's your personality? I talked to a guy who's seen thousands of startups. He said the best product doesn't always win, but the best execution does. One founder built a media company on LinkedIn, posting AI industry news 3 times during their investor meeting. His customer acquisition cost, 0. Another built a cult following on Reddit and scaled a telecom company on the backs of a community. Meanwhile, 30-year CTOs are getting lapped by kids who've only ever coded with AI. Distribution is the new defensibility. Your personality is a go-to market strategy. So if your code disappeared tomorrow, or somebody just copied it, would your business still survive? Welcome to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. That was Jim Ferry, Managing Director at Volition Capital, a growth equity fund that is backed by some of the most capital-efficient companies in the game. If you're a founder between 1 million and 10 million in revenue trying to figure out what actually makes you fundable and durable in an AI world, this one's for you. The playbook Jim just dropped, we go deep. And if you like playbooks, we go deeper every week at aiforfounders.co. That's our newsletter, just the insights that actually move the needle for founders like you. Sign up and your future self will thank you. And if this episode made you think, drop us a 5-star review. It's the highest ROI 2 seconds you'll spend a day. And I'd really appreciate it. Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. You have a company called Volition Capital, and you make investments in startups and businesses. So we talk a lot about investment opportunities here, but we also talk a lot to startup founders who are looking for either venture capital or angel investors or folks that are maybe on the fence. So maybe we can clear up some questions folks might have and kind of shed some light of where we're at as far as April 2026. Why don't you give us a quick introduction to Volition?
Yeah, so Volition's a Series A or Series B growth equity fund. You can think about growth equity sitting somewhere in between kind of early stage venture and the later stage buyouts or PE funds. So we tend to invest in businesses that have found product market fit. Kind of the arbitrary line for that is having over 5 million plus revenue. Where we play is kind of 5 to 50 million in revenue type companies that are scaling well, tend to be more capital efficient businesses. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're profitable, but it's not a kind of grow at all costs model. So people that are focused on unit economics. So many times, we're not following a traditional Series or Silicon Valley kind of venture or kind of early stage VC, I'd say. So we're based in Boston. It's a little bit more of an East Coast mindset. We're still trying to have, really big outcomes, but, doing it while minimizing dilution. So think about our check size in the 15 to 60 million range across really, any type of technology business.
Fun. Yeah, that sounds like a good place for me if I was in the business. Some of these guys, the seed stage is for the thick-skinned and strong-hearted.
That's right. I think seed stage has a high loss ratio, as you can imagine, but they have a couple of huge winners that are going to carry a fund. So they go into a lot of investments knowing that just statistically, a lot of these are not going to work out and they're going to return $0 in capital. Growth has a little bit of a different loss ratio where ours is much lower because these businesses tend to be a little bit more established. So from an investment perspective, it feels like a good risk reward profile, which is why I've kind of spent my career here.
Amazing. And I'm much more of a 0 to 1 guy, so I'm always interested in kind of the problems that founders are facing kind of at this $5 million annual revenue mark, which really seems to be kind of that 2 to 5 place where there's kind of like a new set of problems. So how would you kind of describe problems at that stage?
Yeah, I've always kind of talked about the founder journey in 3 stages. The first one is building, which I'd put in that kind of 0 to 1. And then there's the growth stage. And then there's, as they scale, the founder kind of becomes more of an operator. So we tend to get involved kind of in between that build and growth phase. And, I think at that phase, you start to have to set up a legitimate processes inside the organization. The founder isn't going to be able to have their hands on everything. So you're going to hire a few people that you trust that can take some things off of your plate. But I'd say typically when we come in, these are scrappy founders. first 6 to 9 months, we have a talent team here at Volition. They help a lot of our portfolio companies with hiring world-class talent because everybody's wearing a lot of hats. So I think a lot of the challenges are now become how do we set the business infrastructure up for scale? And that's people, but it's also technology, especially in an AI-driven world. How do we make sure that there's not operating silos happening within the organization and that everyone is pointed at the same North Star and to accomplish a 3 to 5 year vision? So that's where I have the benefit of pattern recognition of sitting on a lot of boards and being an investor in a lot of companies over the years and talking to thousands of companies. So some can hopefully bring a perspective that maybe a founder or entrepreneur who's maybe worked at 1 or 2 companies before starting their own may not have the benefit of seeing.
Amazing. And that's pattern recognition. It's another word for wisdom.
It is. I mean, that's the name of the game. Like I invest in people probably more than I invest in businesses. And, for me, it's about post-investment, helping them avoid some of the pitfalls I've seen other companies take and, taking best practices that we've seen and trying to help them apply it to their business to set them up for success.
Amazing. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about too, having that position where you see a lot of deals, you see a lot of companies, of course, the analysts are going to do their diligence and the company has to be successful. But what are those attributes? What are the attributes of the founder? Maybe the deals you like to put together? What kind of threads these people together?
Yeah, if you put like the business aside and just think about the attributes of a founder, I tend to invest a little bit with my gut. Like you come out of a meeting and I'm like, man, I would back that person no matter what they're doing. And they just happen to be running this type of business and I like that category. So I think one of the most valuable traits is a self-awareness trait of knowing what you don't know. The best founders are the ones that are like, I am very good at this, whatever that skill set is, but I could use some help to hiring a world-class leader to help me on this side of the business. And the ones that think that they can do everything, no one can do everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. So I think it's the people that are trying to make themselves the dumbest person in the room by hiring great talent around them. We kind of have a joke here where we're half kidding that there's 5 things that matter in an investment. It's product, market, management. So we spend a lot of time getting to know the management team and making sure that we feel like, no matter what, the folks around the table are going to set us up for success. And I've seen it many times where the best product doesn't always win. I think best execution always wins.
Quick side note for founders who are using AI to write content. You've probably noticed this. It's incredibly fast, but it doesn't really drive meaningful traffic. And honestly, that's because most AI-generated content is just average. There's no real insight, no depth, no structure. Missing things like internal linking, and Google's getting very good at filtering that out. So instead of trying to just prompt better, I actually came across something interesting called Nina. It's a system that combines human strategy and review with AI writing to create high-quality, SEO-optimized blog content that's actually designed to rank and keep ranking. What I like about it is that it's done for me. Their team handles the topic strategy and the content review and data markups for Google and turns blog posts into actual long-term traffic assets. So if you're a founder thinking seriously about organic growth, this is one of those things worth paying attention to. You can check it out at trynina.co. That's TRYNINA.co, trynina.co. What if you had a partnership manager working for your podcast full-time, reaching out to brands, securing deals, handling all the back and forth while you just focused on making great content? That's Casey. Casey is the AI partnership agent from Howdy who actually goes out and gets your sponsors. Casey reaches out to brands on your behalf, works the conversation, and lands the partnership. You make the show, Casey makes the money. And look, Casey doesn't sleep, she doesn't lose track of follow-ups, and she never gets discouraged by a non-reply. Casey's out there right now working for podcasters who figured this out before you did. The only question is whether your show has a Casey yet. So go meet Casey at gethowdy.com. That's GETHOWDI.com. Takes a couple of minutes to get started, and Casey gets to work immediately. That's gethowdy.com. Yeah, founders aren't necessarily known for being the best managers. and probably where they're coming in to meet with you, this is probably their biggest pain point. What kind of what are you doing to help them, and where are you seeing their lack of skills as far as management goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think every founder is unique. And if they're more of a technical founder, I feel like they almost don't want to manage people. So that's a common thread where even, sometimes as the business scales, they're like, I don't want to be a CTO that's managing an organization of engineers. I want to be coding. And that's fine. And so some people are very self-aware of that, and or maybe want to be an individual contributor on the team to actually get their hands dirty in building products. They might hire another CTO externally or something. I'd say there's been times when a CEO is very go-to-market focused. They are the lifeblood of the go-to-market and sales team, and maybe one of the founders just wants to be a salesperson. They don't want to be the CEO of the business. So I'd say it really varies. I think the best founding teams are the ones, regardless of skill, it's more of a mindset. I love to see an optimist and a pessimist because I think they balance each other out, and they tend to, find the right decision somewhere in the middle between, what's ingrained in their personalities.
Yeah. That is the classic dichotomy of co-founders. You have extrovert, introvert, optimist, pessimist. These are obviously the ends of the mean here. The technical, the sales guy, or gal, for that.
For sure. And it's funny, even that. So we took a look back at some of in our entire investment history and tried to draw, based on 100 attributes, what is the commonality of our best outcomes? And surprisingly, there kind of isn't any. So, we were hoping this is a silver bullet. Maybe that's not surprising to some of your listeners, but, education almost didn't matter. We've had, extreme, some of our biggest exits are Ivy League educated founders, and then founders that never went to college. We thought age would be a big deterministic factor, and we've had great outcomes from people that are in their young 20s and people that have been around the block and industry experts and are 40 plus years old. So there's no silver bullet to this, and no silver bullet to the attributes that the founder has and their strengths and weaknesses. So it is very hard to quantify. But as I mentioned, you invest with your gut, and sometimes you just kind of feel it that someone has aspirations to build a big business, and they're going to let nothing get in their way. And that's the type of founder that I want to back.
Yeah.
You need to think big to be big.
100%. And maybe some other green flags. What are some green flags? And, particularly maybe I'm thinking about with just the prevalence of where we're at with AI assisted engineering, call it vibe coding. Where, a CTO, a really skilled CTO is becoming less valuable, some might argue. Does that kind of shade your judgment as far as leaning towards maybe founders that are more sales oriented or maybe have distribution baked into their own personality?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're seeing more and more businesses in this AI world, to your point around distribution baked into their personality, that is less of the traditional, all right, I'm going to hire 3 sales reps, and I know that each sales rep brings in X amount of revenue, and we're going to pay them this much, and that's how it's simple math as you scale. I met a company the other day that has AI bots that posts a bunch of industry news on his LinkedIn, and he's kind of become a media company specific to his vertical, just based on his LinkedIn industry news. And as I'm sitting there meeting him, he's like, I probably posted 3 times already as we're sitting here in the meeting. And through that, he's almost has a $0 customer acquisition cost strategy, because he's just using his own personality to drive revenue and promote his products in between kind of posting about industry news. We have another portfolio company who's done that well. They were, in essence, a Reddit influencer, which people don't tend to think about as much for his given sector. It's a business called US Mobile, and they've kind of grown on the backs of a Reddit community that's been really strong and active. So, I think in this world, things in this AI-driven world, things have changed a little bit. So, the types of questions and the things that I'm looking for in an entrepreneur is a little different because things are moving so freaking fast. Where we are today is very different than where we were a month and 6 months ago, even. So you want to feel like the people that you're backing are ahead of the curve and they're able to adopt to how fast things are changing with AI. And to your point, it may not be that CTO that's been in the industry for 30 years. The people that are the best at utilizing AI tools and playing around with them are I don't like to call them kids, but they are the kids that have grown up in this world where AI has existed over the last 2 years that have been in college or so. So it's not always the CTO that has a preconceived notion of this is how I've coded for the last 30 years. It's someone who's only learned how to code using AI that may be more valuable in the long run.
Well, and I talk to a dozen founders a week, and let me tell you, they're all CTOs now.
Yeah, that's good. I know, it's amazing. I think everyone has become an engineer now, where that used to be a barrier. And when I think about the durability of the investments that we make in the long run, code used to be something that was defensible, and it's kind of not now. So you need to think about what makes this business sustainable over the long run. And there's a lot of different variations to that. It could be first-party data, it could be distribution, it could be proprietary integrations through non-public APIs with specific companies or something. But there's a lot of flavors to that. But I think at Volition and at every investment firm, the key question right now is, what is the durability of this in the long run?
Yeah. Maybe personal question. How about you? What are you working on? What experiments are you running with AI? What are you building? What little toys you got going on in the background?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as a firm, our general philosophy is we cannot invest in native AI businesses if we don't understand AI and know how to use it ourselves. So honestly, I think with us and who are operating in somewhat of a regulated finance world and some larger startups, I think a big barrier to AI adoption is compliance. If you're kind of a small startup, you may not have all the systems in place, and I think that's probably our head of compliance will hate to hear me say this, but probably a good thing because they can experiment faster and there's not hoops that they need to jump through. So, for instance, like OpenClaw, we have separate laptops internally that we use that are kind of sandboxed from all of our other systems to set up OpenClaw bots that help us on the sourcing front. So that's finding new companies. So our analysts, we have a lot of different both third-party and first-party systems that we've built to help all of our analysts kind of find interesting companies on a daily and weekly basis. And now they can show up and sit at their desk, and we've created bots in that kind of sandbox environment that are serving up, hey, here's 50 potentially interesting companies that you should be looking at. You can kind of click through them, and once the compliance gets there, we'll integrate that with our CRM and so forth. But in the meantime, we've built a connection between our internal first-party system with Claude. So everything that you used to click through and spend a lot of time there to find companies to, find. Let's say we have 10 high-priority companies in our pipeline. We've set up an artifact and system to force rank, hey, these are the VC funds or angels or regional tech communities or accelerators that are invested in those 10 companies. So we should be building a relationship there. So we're doing a lot of things that are just automating the day-to-day manual processes right now. I don't think that's that unique from anyone else, but I find it really fun, to be honest. It's like it's almost like playing a video game. It's somewhat addicting once you kind of set some things up and set some agents up to do some cool stuff. Like every day I show up, I now have 3 tweets waiting to go based on my interests. I jot down some things in my Notion that it's connected to, and it'll kind of marry that with any industry news. So we're doing a lot of fun things here, and it's helping us learn to understand what are the possibilities for some of the companies we back.
Yeah. How do you prompt your personal tweets? Like, how do you give it that distinct Jim Ferry tone?
Yeah, it's a work in progress, I'd say. So first, I had it analyze, my prior tweets to understand my tone, what I like to tweet about, and it's just kind of constant iteration of, hey, I would never actually say that. I would never use those terms. This is too professional. Now this one's too, relaxed in nature, and so I'm trying to find that happy median. We're getting better. But still a little work to be done.
Yeah, 100%. That's cool. So you're setting up OpenClaw to go source deal potential. Kind of like, how are you setting a framework for that? Is there like obviously there's a certain size company. They have to be kind of like in a certain position in there with runway. Basically, what parameters are you giving OpenClaw to go out there and look for opportunities?
Yeah, so
there's financials, of course. There's a place where they are with the capital they've raised already. Are you using like PitchBook to source information? Are you looking in media? Like, how are you kind of finding new opportunities?
Yep. So all of the above. And we've actually encouraged what we don't want to do is to create one agent that every one of our analysts and all of our employees are using. That's serving the same companies. So we've actually kind of shown all the analysts, hey, here's how to set this up, here's how to do it. And we want them to be creative to make sure that they're all getting a different flavor of company, to make sure that we're seeing every possible company in the universe out there that could be interesting. What we have done is, set it up in a way where it's serving you, 50 companies when you come in in the morning, and you're constantly training it. So you're saying, this is interesting, and you can put a little note, here's why, or this is not interesting, and here's why. Or maybe this one have raised too much money, this is outside of our spec. We'll never invest in a company that's been backed by this fund because, they're a mega fund, and if it was a good company, they're just going to fund it themselves. So all those little things, it's the worst, the first at serving companies, the first time you set it up, and it's getting better and better week by week and month by month.
Cool. And it's a relationship building game. So you get a good prospect, they're coming in, you're like, yeah, this would be great. How do you start to initiate that relationship? Is that an email? Is that a tweet? How are you kind of getting to know folks?
Yeah. So it's funny. It's worth noting that, the traditional growth equity model is kind of called the sourcing model. So we had 15 analysts and associates here that reach out to founders. They probably have 20 calls on a weekly basis to kind of pre-qualify leads and explain to them who Volition is, see if there's a good fit. And we discuss those in our pipeline meeting on Monday morning. Historically, when I did the job, over a decade ago, of kind of pure sourcing as an analyst and associate, it was a lot of email, and the response rates were pretty good. And then Salesloft came along and all these auto drip campaign emails, and everybody's inboxes were flooded. And now AI has come along, and all these crappy canned emails are now oddly specific. And we've kind of gone from like, oh, these super canned emails are now becoming so specific and so tailored and good that people now know that those are
fake
AI emails. So it's almost finding this balance of personal, not too specific, where they think that or know that this was a custom email and someone actually wants to talk to me. Now I think inboxes are flooded, so we spend a lot of time reaching out to folks on LinkedIn. We are cognizant of the fact that with Cowork and some other AI tools out there, LinkedIn inboxes are about to be flooded over the next coming months. So ultimately, the best way to break through to a hard to reach company, or one that we think or know is good, is through relationships. So we spend a lot of time networking and, trying to back channel our way into a company that we think is good, that, we call them kind of the hard to reach companies that we have some type of signal on there or a hunch that we think it's pretty interesting, but are struggling to get in touch. And part of that is spending a lot of time on the road and meeting people face to face in a Zoom driven world. It's amazing how many founders I'll go meet face to face, and they tell me I'm the first or second in-person meeting that they've had, and they get 20 emails a week from other venture or growth equity funds. So I think that goes a long way. Sitting across the table from someone, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks over the year over Zoom, and a week later you might forget about that conversation. But if you sit down with someone, have coffee with them for 45 minutes, you tend to remember that more.
Yeah, I agree. What about inbound versus outbound? Outbound's a big effort, but do you have a lot of people knocking on the door? And maybe what percentage of those folks are well qualified?
For the most part, the inbound leads tend to be, because this, like, I'll take a step back. This growth equity sourcing model has been around for 20 plus years now. There's like a lot of firms that do it. It's not unique to Volition, but so I think the best companies, a lot of us are using similar tools. We all know who some of the best companies are, and people talk, word gets around. So we're all trying to break through, to the same companies. So if someone is coming inbound, it's either because they're unbelievably under the radar that no one knows about them, which is rare, or the quality probably isn't that great. Now, I'm speaking of saying, hey, this is a founder direct inbound to us. What happens a lot is we get kind of a warm lead where someone says, hey, like someone in our network may reach out and say, hey, I talked to this one. I think that this could be a really good one for you guys. So I'm going to introduce you. That happens a lot, and those tend to be high quality. But I can only think of one time where I got a true founder inbound where I wound up investing in the business. Most of the time it's kind of through an intermediary or someone that knows them that's kind of making the connection.
Yeah. What's your feeling on kind of like those under the radar businesses, which, now there's a kind of a lot of heat around, not even like pre-AI companies, but like pre-internet companies, like ball bearing manufacturers. I drive by these like industrial parks and I'm like, who's that? It's like ABC Construction or something like that. And they've been around for 50 years. Is there any interest from you guys in like companies like that?
So yes and no. So what I'll say about is like under the radar companies. So as I mentioned, we invest in purely tech companies. So we're not going to invest in a ball bearing company. However, this industry taught me anything. There's a lot of ways to make money. There's a lot of different types of businesses out there, and just getting to talk to thousands of companies on an annual basis kind of paints the picture of like, man, there's a lot of ways to make money in a lot of different businesses. Historically, in a pre-AI world, the best indicator for us and our efforts to say a company is at a 5 million plus run rate was employee headcount. You need a certain amount of engineers, you have a certain amount of C-level executives, a certain amount of people in customer success and sales. Once you kind of got to 25 to 30 employees, assuming that you're not burning a ton, so it's relative to kind of capital raised, you're probably nearing in that kind of like 3 to 5 million plus run rate. So that used to be like heavy reliance on employee count for as the number one indicator of stage of the business. I mean, we just had I'm sure you saw it, there was like a 2-person company that got acquired for over $1 billion now with AI. So the headcount is now not a relevant metric for scale in an AI world. So it's almost like make sure we're boiling the ocean and talking to everyone. And if it's maybe too early, we're checking back in 6 months to a year. So it is becoming, somewhat harder in the fact that any company could be in our zone relative to headcount. But it's also becoming easier in a way that I think our TAM is expanding, our addressable market opportunity, because I think that it is now easier to build a capital efficient business and get to 5 million plus run rate.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can turn this ball bearing company into an AI company.
Well, Allbirds just went from a shoe company to an AI company, so maybe you can figure it out.
Yeah, they're going to rent NVIDIA chips or something like that.
I don't know what the strategy is, but the stock popped on it. So I doubt they're going to be the last one to do this crazy pivot.
It's like when what's his name from old Twitter he bought 2 billion in like Bitcoin at its peak.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Hopefully
exactly.
not. Nice.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of chatter. This is the ultimate sign of a bubble, but we shall see.
We shall see. Yeah. Nobody really knows. Again, there's just such an atmosphere of like excitement and kind of terror and like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, well, if you compare it back to the last big tech bubble of the dot-com bubble when that burst. I mean, there was a lot of hype around startups at crazy valuations, but I think we can all sit here and say the internet worked. It was transformational. And there's been a lot of companies that did survive that and made a lot of money. And that's probably going to happen here. I think that there is probably a lot of AI companies that are just a wrapper on someone else's technology, and maybe not super defensible in the long run. And those will probably suffer and never grow into the big valuations that they got early on. But there's going to be a lot of money made, and even if you just compare it to when we went from license and maintenance to on-prem software to cloud-hosted SaaS. If you just kind of picked off every category winner of this is the best SaaS company in every single category, you would have made billions of dollars. I think that same strategy will hold today in an AI world, where you're basically just saying, hey, what are the vertical categories that AI is going to disrupt, kind of traditional incumbent SaaS products that are not fast to adapt into an AI world, and you're going to make a lot of money. So that's kind of how we're thinking about sourcing a little bit.
Love it. I'm more of a early stage startup type investor, although I promised my wife I would no longer invest in startups. But I'm always looking for go-to-market and repeatable sales processes being kind of like an indicator of opportunity. Now, you guys are, they already have traction. They've got product market fit. They're in a good place. So they've created sales processes that are effective. Are you seeing any commonalities between that? Like you mentioned, there's a Reddit influencer and you've got somebody who's driving pipe through LinkedIn. Is it really kind of checkerboard all over the place with different techniques and platforms, or is there kind of things that are working really well right now?
It is a little over the place, and I think it depends on the industry or segment that they play in. Where, I'll give you a couple of fun ones that were creative that I've seen. Like in our portfolio, there was one business that reached a lot of scale and had a really big exit, and they were in the compliance space, and they used to create a list of the top 100 people in supply chain compliance. And they made the list every year, and they put all their top prospects on the list that they were trying to sell to. And, then those people, they'd say, hey, they'd send them something in the mail, say, congrats on making this list. Let us know if you want to do an interview or something. And that's a good way to have like a 30% plus conversion rate on those people. So like, that's a really creative way that I've seen. A lot of companies are now in our portfolio. There's another one that is basically scouring a bunch of both public and third-party data sources that they pay for, and AI is scraping that in a similar way that I talk about our Open Club agents that are finding us leads potentially at Volition, and they're doing that, and it's auto emailing all of them based on who that person that they're reaching out is, something about their social media account that like tips them off something. So for example, if they see that someone is a dog lover, they're going to put a funny dog meme into the email or something like that, something very unique that catches their eye. And that's worked really well for them. So it is all over the map. Yeah. And, candidly, I think in a lot of companies that we invest in, they've found product market fit, but a lot of it is founder-led sales for the most part. And we're coming in at a point when they're trying to transition into a more scalable approach of how do we build a repeatable process that's not just so reliant on the founder.
Yeah, totally. How about events? A good buddy of mine is probably the number one AI go-to-market tool, and he's going big on events. I love the irony of that, for his product.
Yeah. A few portfolio company of mine that they live and die by events, and they're at every single event and hosting cocktail hours. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier of how I spend a lot of my time on the roads, just sitting across the table from someone, hanging out, grabbing dinner or coffee or a drink. I think cannot be replaced by a Zoom or Google Meet.
How do you choose events that you attend?
So we, as a firm, try to make sure that we have like representation at basically every trade event that we can find. So, that's everyone, myself, all, down to the analysts and associates are all, going to a lot of events. It tends to be ones where I can hang out for, I feel like the list that we go through has enough volume for me to have a packed 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
I candidly spend a lot less time, hearing the keynote speakers and more time just meeting entrepreneurs and going to cocktail hours and so forth.
Yeah. So the value isn't necessarily like the events themselves. It's like pre-scheduling meetings beforehand. What about having a booth? Do you like to attend as a guest, or do you like to kind of set up shop?
We rarely have a booth, to be honest. I'm trying to, it's more about who is attending the event, less what the event is for us. And because I think, just if I go to an event and I meet with 20 companies, I probably learn more talking to 30 minutes with 20 companies than I do from like any speaker on stage at them who's giving a lecture. Just because you get a feel for what is everyone doing, what's happening in this market. And I also try to go if I feel like there's going to be a cohort of our portfolio companies at a specific event. That's a good way to kill two birds with one stone, and I'll go meet a bunch of new companies while also hanging out with our portfolio companies. And if our portfolio company is there, it probably means that event is good prospecting for other ones.
Cool.
That kind of fits the same mold.
Yeah. How about kind of the off-brand parties? There's at all the big events. There's always like a spreadsheet of everything else that's kind of happening around. It's kind of tangentially related, but not officially part of that. How do you find that spreadsheet, and why is it always the long-haired guy with a beard?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I found that to be honest, like the last few big conferences that I've been to, I've found more success out of like a curated dinner with 15 or 20 people of making really good connections that I was invited to over the conference itself. Yeah. And I think that's because like I'm finding a lot of these conferences, especially if they're like a big industry trade show, they tend to be expensive. So there's a lot of startups who are like, I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a pass or $25,000 on a booth, but I'm going to go hang out at the hotel.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the event organizers hate hearing that. But so like a lot of the meetings that I'm having are happening around the event, but outside of the actual conference expo hall.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of drilling you here because I'm kind of psyching myself up to get back out and do events. I was producing an after party for a conference in a couple of weeks, and it kind of fell apart. But along those lines, it's like, events, I struggle because a lot of times you have like cliques that they've been going to the same events forever, trying to break into that. But it's almost like you show up with a disco ball jacket and just create gravity so people come to you and be like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And then kind of mix in, I don't know. I'm looking for strategies here.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think you're right, by the way. Like these conferences that have been going on for 10 plus years, like the dinner I just mentioned that I went to recently, it's a dinner that's been going on for like 5 or 10 years. I kind of felt like the odd man in the room because most of the people have been going to that dinner for that many years. So, but it was like an awesome group of folks, investors, bankers, startups, late stage companies, and, just networking with all of them is kind of where all that about deal flow comes. They're like, oh, you should check out this company. I'm an advisor at this company, at this company that could be a good fit for you. And, someone coming out of that is going to be an independent board member, another portfolio company of mine. So, it's either you gotta do what you said and kind of be the gravity or the force to pull everybody in, or somehow weasel your way into these dinners or network events that have been going on for a while.
Yeah, I'm going weasel because it's too much energy to try and be the magnet. You know what I mean? I can't be doing that.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. Since we're talking a little bit about personality here, the $1 trillion companies now that kind of came out of Web 2 and cloud and all that, if you're talking about Sam Altman and Elon and Zuckerberg, they all have kind of a similar personality, kind of spectrum-y, maybe a little bit socially awkward. Is there a new personality of the next crop of kind of AI founders that you're seeing emerge?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have yet to invest in $1 trillion company, so but we're looking for them. But I almost feel like in order to be that $1 trillion company, to your point, you almost have to be wired differently.
I was going to say diabolical.
Diabolical is a good way to put it. I was trying to be politically correct. But yeah, so you got to be wired differently a little bit, because I think, there's a lot of founders along the way. If you're on the way to build $1 trillion company and someone offers you, to acquire your business for 10 or 20 billion, they probably take that money and go sit on a beach for the rest of their life. It's like, you have to be wired. Like Elon Musk is the, I don't know the last time I checked, but obviously potentially the richest person in the world, depending on when this podcast goes live. And he still works, works his butt off. And, I actually think that is funny. Like, it's something that we've gotten more comfortable with as Volition's grown a little bit and our check sizes have increased a bit. Like, we've gotten a lot more comfortable with giving founders some portion of liquidity, where before we used to think it would be demotivating for them. A lot of founders that we back are like less motivated by monetary gains and more motivated by just building a really big business that's going to outlast them. Yeah. For a lot of them, it's their baby. It's another child to them. So I think that motivates a lot of people. But to answer your question, like your original question, what is the psychology or personality of these people? I think they're tinkerers, people that in their free time are, instead of, watching a movie, they're playing around with all these new AI tools and finding fun, creative ways to set their business apart, or because things are moving so fast, you can't take a day off. Like, every time I feel like I go on Twitter in the morning, I'm like, I feel behind from the last 12 hours that I was sleeping on all the updates in AI. It's like anxiety ridden, but it's the people that are tinkering not only for their business, but just doing fun things so they can learn. And those are the people that are going to be able to adapt and make sure that their business stays ahead of the curve instead of falling behind in this fast moving AI world.
Yeah. The feeling of being behind is omnipresent with everybody. You're not alone with that, particularly with me too, but I found an antidote. You want to know what it is? What? It's a 1-to-1 ratio. For every minute you spend on X, just go over to Facebook. And as far behind as you feel on X, on Facebook, you're like, oh my God, I'm a god.
Yeah, it's funny. So I had a founder who I would put in the, top decile of AI adoption, knowledge, tinkering, and just transformation of his business. And he constantly came to me being like, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm behind. Like, what am I missing? And the answer is nothing. Like, I actually think you're ahead. And he, went to this event where he was with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, and he came back to me and he's like, it was the first time I realized I actually am ahead of other people, because they're asking me what I think are basic questions. And so no matter how advanced you are, I think everyone feels like they're behind. You're right.
Well, if you go to aiforfounders.co right now, the hero section, right on top, H1 header, you are not behind. I am preaching this gospel, and the reason you're not behind, because if everybody's behind, then you're not behind.
Yeah, and I'd also say that maybe someone who is behind. My parents are behind. Yeah. It is not too late to catch up. Yeah. You play around. Like, it's the best part about a lot of these AI tools is they're so intuitive to use, because it's a chat functionality that everyone is already familiar with. So whenever I don't know how to do something, or the first time I try to create a bot or set up OpenClaw, it's just like, I do not have a technical or engineering background. Teach me this like I'm an 8th grader, and it walks you through step by step. So plenty of time for anyone to learn.
Well, and fun prompt, because they're careful with their language, particularly Anthropic. They say, like, talk to it with common language. I'm like, common language? I was like, all right. So every once in a while, I'll open, my terminal and be like, do the thing I like the way I like it, and just see what happens. Yeah. It's like, what's it going to do? I don't even know. Sure. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I found that, one of the best tools is asking the LLMs, what am I missing? It's, hey, I'm talking to you all day long, Claude. What is an agent that I can build to automate some of my daily workflows that maybe I haven't built yet or thought about? And it's pretty damn good at it. Really good. I think people are much more in tune with telling Claude, tasks or whatever platform they're using instead of asking, hey, what should I be doing to automate my day-to-day workflows?
Amazing. Jim, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate what you do. I appreciate this conversation. I think for a lot of folks, this is a game, and that's what keeps them in. I've had great pleasure of, interviewing probably a dozen Billies, folks that had exited with a $500 million exit, and then they're talking to me about their new thing. And I always ask them, I'm just like, dude, why? Like, why don't you hang it up? Boat drinks, go fishing in the Keys. Like, what's the deal? And there's always a little kind of stutter, but it always comes down to they love the game, And like when you get that taste of like giving something to somebody that they love and they pay you for it, it's intoxicating and it's so fun. So, what you're doing at Volition is a huge part of that and just ends up being like, massive gasoline on the fire for the hearts of these founders. So I appreciate your work. Volitioncapital.com is where you can check out the fund. And Jim, where's the best place for people to connect with you personally online?
Yeah, my email's jim@volitioncapital.com. Pretty easy. And if you want to follow me on X or Twitter, it's @JimFerryVC.
Love it. And before we get out of here, I want to make sure we can plant SEO link for a nonprofit that's near and dear to your heart. Tell us a little bit about jimmyfund.org.
Yeah, so the Jimmy Fund is a big kind of nonprofit here in the Boston, Massachusetts area. It's all about raising money for cancer care and research at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. A lot of it's focused on kind of pediatric cancer care and kind of near and dear to my heart. My grandfather was really involved with it, as I was growing up. And it's a great organization.
Amazing. Shout out to them, jimmyfund.org. Links to all this will be in the show notes wherever you're listening to this. Everybody, thanks for listening. Jim, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Every week, I sit down and ask myself one question. What do founders actually need to know about AI right now? Not the think pieces or the stuff that sounds impressive, the real useful put it to work today stuff. Then I write it up, send it to you in your inbox free. That newsletter is called AI for Founders, and I built it because I was tired of wading through hit pieces and people that are afraid of the future. Each issue, I break down the tools worth your time, the strategies that are working, and the ways you can use AI to grow your company without burning out or getting left behind. Thousands of founders read it every week, and I'd love for you to be one of them. Subscribe for free at aiforfounders.co. 3 seconds to sign up, and I promise it's worth it. Founders, you know better than anyone. The game changed overnight. Every industry runs on AI now. Medicine, law, finance, design, all of it. And while you're busy building the future, there's a whole generation of students about to enter the workforce who have no idea how to compete in it. AInativestudent.com fixes that. It's one-on-one AI coaching built specifically for high school and college students, personalized to their goals, their career path, their actual life. Your kid isn't learning to code, they're learning how to be fluent in the operating system of modern work. And colleges and employers, they're already noticing. Head to AInativestudent.com. It takes a couple minutes to apply for your student and lock in the 30-day money-back guarantee. The window to get ahead is right now. AInativestudent.com, and definitely have them sign up for the AI chat. It's the fastest growing for students in the world. Every founder I know is posting on LinkedIn, grinding on X, maybe dabbling in short-form video. And the dirty secret nobody wants to say out loud is you don't own any of it. One algorithm change and your audience evaporates overnight. The only audience you actually own is your email list. That's why the smartest founders in the world are building newsletters, and Inbox Alchemy builds it for you. They create your weekly founder newsletter, design a beautiful newsletter website, and grow your audience to 25,000 subscribers in the first 6 months. All of it is managed so it drives real pipeline. It builds your reputation, it nurtures the relationships that turns into deals, partnerships, and opportunities you can't even predict yet. Social is rented, email is owned. The founders who figured that out early win for decades. Go to inboxalchemy.co, that's inboxalchemy.co, and start building the audience that's actually yours.